Check. Check 1, 2. Let me check 1, 2. Check, 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 check. Check. Check, 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 check. Ooh. Right on time, man. I cannot hear you though.
There we go.
There we
Hello.
go.
You got
Jason, how
me?
you doing? Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Let me fix
Yeah.
something here. I think my audio's fucked up.
On this end, I can hear you fine.
Yeah, I'm at my desk, which has like three different ways to record and like eight screens behind behind my laptop here. So 1 second.
I should probably turn off Logic too as well.
Sure. Display output. Delete. So, hello.
I'm good if you're good.
There you are. Okay, I got it now. I just had to be able to control it from my computer. What's up?
Nothing, man. I'm still kind of waking up, which is kind of
Yeah.
pathetic, but I have
You're
two. What's that?
No, go ahead.
I have two kids,
Oh, okay.
6 and 3. My wife's in Africa right now,
Oh,
so
what the
I,
hell? Awesome.
yeah, she's doing some volunteer work. She's an operating room nurse, so she went to Africa to do some volunteer work. So she's coming back on Sunday, which I'm very thankful for. My parents came into town and are helping
Incredible.
out a little bit, so I was able to
Oh,
do this specifically
oh.
because they're taking care of the kids right now.
Hey, round of applause for the wife. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. She's doing a
Yeah,
really cool thing
yeah.
for
Very
sure.
cool. Awesome.
Uh,
And you're
Thank
in
you.
where'd you say you were?
I
Seattle?
am right outside of Portland,
Oh, Portland. Okay,
Oregon.
cool.
Yeah, so it's a town or a city called Vancouver, Washington. I lived in Portland for a little bit. I've kind of been all over, up and down the West Coast. Kind of lived by the Canadian border in a place called Bellingham, Washington, for about 6 or 7 years. But I'm originally from New Jersey, so
Oh, Jersey. Oh, okay. So
yes,
far away.
yes,
Far
pretty
away.
far away. But I've lived in this area probably for about like 15 to 20 years at
Okay.
this point. And you're in Kansas City.
I'm in Kansas City, yeah.
Is that home base?
It's home base. Born and mostly raised here, and came back. I was gone. I don't know, like maybe 4 or 5 years, and then I came back like around 2010. And I've been
Okay,
here
cool.
like ever since. So yeah, I love it. It's just quiet. It's chill.
Never been. I lived in Oklahoma for a little bit,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
Tulsa, but I think
Okay.
we would go see some shows kind of in the Missouri area if we could get up there in the early 2000s. Um,
Yeah, I'm trying to
but
think about that. Would that be like St. Louis, Springfield area, or
yeah, I think so. It's really hazy. I mean, it was like early to mid
I?
2000s, type
Yeah, I
thing.
get reminded that we used to go up to Lincoln, Nebraska,
Yeah,
which is I don't know what Lincoln is, like 3 hours maybe, like
yeah.
not far, from Kansas City. And I was like, what? Like, where did we go see? Like, oh, we went to go see Burning Airlines. I'm like, oh, oh shit. Like Lincoln is like really close. I forgot about
Yeah.
that.
I
Yeah,
I for the being in Tulsa in that area, there's a surprising amount of shows that went through
yeah,
in
yeah.
smaller
It's
venues.
it's the stop. It's like if you're coming up from Texas, you can stop in
Right.
Oklahoma, and then you
Yeah.
can skip Kansas City.
Yeah.
Uh, or if you, a lot of times it's like if you go to Kansas City, you skip Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Like Oklahoma, Kansas City, uh, and I'm lumping Missouri and Kansas into Kansas City. But it's like Nebraska, Kansas City, and Oklahoma agents view as like one and the same.
Yeah.
It's so annoying. Like for these us Midwesterners, it's like, oh, we have got to go to Oklahoma to see this gig,
Right.
or hopefully this tour does a second leg and it comes to Kansas City, or
Dallas was a big one that we tried to travel to. It was pretty
yeah,
far away, but I think we went all the way to go see. I think it was like Thursday Thrice and Coheed and Cambria on a
oh shit,
tour.
yeah, I
There,
remember that.
we had nothing to. So I went to a Christian college that was like, and we had nothing to do.
Yeah,
So that was our thing. Like we would just like the guys on my floor, we would all go travel to shows and whatnot. So we had plenty of time on our
yeah.
hands.
Well, what era was that? Like
Early
early 2000s?
2000s.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah. Like 2000, 2002 ish
okay,
is when I went
nice.
there. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Only
that
for
was.
a couple years, but
Oh,
yeah. So I have a question for you.
yes.
Based on your Instagram profile, just a little snooping that I did. Would
Hmm.
you consider yourself a Seinfeld fan?
Yeah, very much so.
Okay. So
But big Seinfeld guy.
I did this with Zach Gehring from May,
Hmm.
the guitarist from May,
Yeah.
and we did a little bit of Seinfeld trivia.
Okay.
So I'm gonna start off with just a couple a Seinfeld trivia
I love
questions
it.
for
All right,
you.
let's go.
My wife gave me a game, a Seinfeld trivia game, which is it comes with a little marble rye and a fishing pole.
Oh, incredible. Oh, so good. That's
All right.
awesome.
So let's do like 3 or 4 questions, okay?
Okay, perfect.
All right. Which characters lie leading to an overly strong glasses prescription, which causes them to accidentally buy $100 worth of gum in Chinatown?
Wait, so the question is which character wore the glasses?
Which characters lied to Lloyd Braun?
Which characters lied to Lloyd Braun? Well, Jerry wore the glasses.
Right, correct.
Yeah, but that's not the answer, right? You're asking
There's
which
one more
character.
character that was involved.
Oh, it'd be Kramer.
Kramer, correct.
Yeah, yeah,
Jerry and Kramer.
yeah.
Um, who ends up with the last case of their favorite pharmaceutical product after it's taken off the market and must decide who is worthy to use it?
Elaine,
Correct.
sponge worthy.
Yes, exactly. Which character has their gym membership revoked after being too squeamish to perform mouth to mouth on the pool boy?
um, well, there's two.
Correct.
It'd be Newman and Jerry.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the pool, that's the pool boy.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's Ramon. Ramon is the pool boy.
Ramon and Newman is doing ollie ollie oxen
Yeah,
free.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Cannonballs into the. I hate that I'm going that, but
Which character uses a police scanner to give shortcut tips to the local fire department?
Kramer.
All right, this will be our last one. Which character makes a permanent enemy of a persnickety purveyor of delicious soup by failing to respect the ordering guidelines?
Elaine.
Correct. I mean, I think there could be two answers for that, right? There could
I
be Elaine and George, sort
and
of,
George. Yeah,
right? Yeah,
yeah. So it's like Elaine brings down the soup Nazi.
right.
George gets kicked out for asking for free bread.
Favorite. Yeah,
Um, and then you could actually say three. And Jerry's girlfriend, who was kissing him in
that's
line,
right.
is
Yeah.
also got booted.
All right. Bonus one.
Okay,
Who gets grapefruit juice squirted in their eye, leading to a series of misinterpreted winks?
well, it's George.
Here we go.
Um,
Correct.
uh, it's technically pulp if we want to
Right.
like boil
Right.
down. Yeah, we all know pulp can move. So
uh these, like, my wife gave me these, and she was like, you'll probably know all of them, and I like went through
yeah,
a whole stack, and I was like, that this is too easy. But I showed it to Zach, and he was like, we've got to get on and play together, and I was like, yeah, definitely, maybe we can add you to
happy.
the
I've got a Seinfeld group chat um, with a handful of guys, and uh, it's real deep, deep.
it goes real deep.
It cuts really deep, like specific scenes and reactions, and this is why this part is so funny. And have you ever noticed this? You
Right.
know, like all of these, like sometimes, like my buddy Bo, he lives in Seattle. Um, he is like a whole other level. There's like it's like a beautiful mind, but with Seinfeld, like recall and like the little things throughout the episodes. Oh, on this
Yeah.
episode, you ever noticed this? And I'm like, you're
Have you ever noticed? Yeah.
yeah. Have you ever noticed? You ever noticed? Yeah, that's awesome.
All right, that was our warm up, trying to get things kind of going here. So you said you landed up in, or just grew up mostly in Kansas City,
Yeah,
Missouri, mostly your entire life. Um, did you grow up in a certain section of Kansas City, or kind of like all over the
I was
area?
I was mostly in like the South KC area,
Okay,
um, which was about like kind of the southwest side. Which was I don't know maybe is 10 or 12 miles from the city. Like it's fairly close. The metro area is like you're like 10 to 20 miles from the city. Like
okay,
if you like the heart of downtown, everyone's like the furthest they're going to be is like maybe 25 miles, and if you're
sure,
25 miles away, you're like in the suburb, like
yeah,
way out in the burbs. Um, but still super like easy. Like we have not enough people to congest our highways. So,
that's nice. That's really nice.
yeah, everyone just says Kansas City because you technically, it's like I lived in Independence or Blue Springs or Overland Park, but it was like you're in the city in 15 minutes.
Right,
So,
right,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So, but I was technically in the southwest side.
So you must
Um,
be a Chiefs fan.
Massive Chiefs fan, diehard Chiefs fan.
So you must be
Uh,
pretty stoked.
really stoked. It's been a crazy. A bunch of us were together last night, and we were just like, man, this is a like crazy run. Like we're not like quite numb to it because we went through so much like football sadness in the 1990s and early
Yeah.
2000s, but we're like, all right, well, winning
My wife's
is
a
pretty
diehard
cool.
49ers fan.
Uh,
So that was a really, really painful experience. But I just
yeah.
want to ask you, how much have you contributed to paying off the refs?
Well, it's interesting because as much as we tried to pay off the refs for all those years, they refused to take our money.
And they're just coming around now,
So
huh?
right now they're just starting to come around, and really we think that it's just like, we're not even giving them money at this point. It's just like they've owed us so much,
Sure.
from the Colts game and then in '95 to the Broncos game to the Colts game in '03, which we call the no punt game because we lost the game without punting. Um, the Brady game in '18 with the Phantom roughing the passer. penalty, um, the muffed punt that was called, that was overturned. It was just all this crazy stuff. So like, we just think that it's, you
It's
know,
payback. It's payback time.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're getting our payback here. It's like, but it's just like hyped. It's funny. Like we all love it, just because
Yeah.
like anything with social media the last like handful of years has just been
Can we at least admit that the placement of the Bills ball was
on the fourth
shady?
down.
Yeah. And the third down, actually.
Oh yeah, but the problem with that is that's totally like I don't know like why people aren't more upset with the third down call
Sure.
because the
Yeah,
fourth
yes.
down
No,
call,
that,
you know what
yeah.
I
I
mean?
think yes. Yeah.
So because we were all like watching and we're like, yeah, like I'm like, oh, we got a great spot,
Yeah.
and then the fourth down comes and yeah, it's like if that had been called a first down and the Chiefs reviewed it, they weren't going to overturn it. And
Right.
me as a football fan, like watched it for many years, I would go, don't challenge this because it's not going to get overturned.
Yeah.
I felt the same way about the Bills. I'm like, every single game is like this. If it's not clear cut, they're just going to go with the call on the field. But
Right.
if you had you challenged the third down spot, you would have gotten a first down.
Right.
And if you
Right.
go back and watch the 49ers Super Bowl last year, in that second half, for both teams, there was like a 49ers spot too. We were all watching that game and going, these spots are absolutely terrible. Like the Chiefs got a really bad spot on a second down. They got another really bad spot on a first down where they struggled on second down to get like half a yard, and then it was third down, and you're just going like, but he got the first down. And same thing with McCaffrey, like they spotted McCaffrey really bad. So if you just like watch that game, you could go through that game too and just go, these spots are not very good. So
Right.
it's like the same thing in the Bills game, but it happens like constantly. So it's like,
I don't know if you are on social media very much, but there's a guy who does a really good Napoleon Dynamite impression, and I mean, you have to see it, but he's always like, "All hail the great Patrick Mahomes." It's like Chiefs get 50 fucking billion points. Like it's really
love it.
it's really
I
full on.
and then I am look to quote a great professional wrestler, to be the man, you have to beat the man,
To beat the man. Yeah.
right? And like
Woo!
exactly, ain't no one beating Patrick Mahomes right now. So it's like just deal with it. If it was fixed, I hope everyone has been betting on the Chiefs
Yeah.
and just like making buku bucks
Right.
this year.
Right.
Like it's
You should follow Out of Context Ric Flair on Instagram because it's
I'm gonna
freaking
find that.
hilarious.
Yeah, I'm gonna find that.
Are you a big
It's funny. Josh Allen even said that to an extent. Like to be the champs, you got to beat the champs, and we're like,
Yeah.
all right, yeah, that's true.
Are you a big wrestling fan or were?
Yeah, like '80s, late '80s, early '90s.
Yeah.
Um,
I
as a kid,
constantly listen to a I fall asleep every night to Jim Cornette has a podcast and it's a lot of wrestling history. It's like
those have popped up every now and then.
yeah, Smoky Mountain Wrestling, kind of the older stuff. But he reviews a lot of the newer stuff too. So I don't even
He's
watch
wild.
wrestling. He is. He
He's
is.
wild.
Um, it's
But
really funny, but
I don't know what's going on in the last 25 years
yeah,
or 30 years with wrestling. There's definitely that like part of it was like such a big culture in like the mid to late 90s.
yeah, with
That,
yeah,
yeah, like you couldn't like NWO and
Attitude
stuff like
Area,
that.
yeah,
Yeah, you couldn't turn on a TV without seeing it. So like
right.
everyone kind of like followed it to an extent. But like me and some of my friends, like we just think that like 80s, mid to late 80s to that pre NWO era is like the funniest
Right, yeah.
bit ever. Like we constantly will like send stuff back and forth. We just think because it is like it was the storylines were crazy.
Right,
Um, you knew it wasn't real, but I was 9,
right.
and I assumed that the Undertaker was an actual dead human being that was walking the earth.
Yeah.
But only Hulk Hogan could beat him.
Beat him, right. Yeah.
So,
Um Yeah, well, sometimes like in the morning, we'll brush my son's hair and we'll be like styling and profiling, baby. Like,
Dude, like, and we use another buddy of mine. We send Flair stuff all the time.
yeah, he's
We,
great, man. One of the best promo people in
oh, dude
the entire
could,
world.
and it's my buddy Mike, and he'll go on Instagram and do these. He's a big Chiefs fan, and he'll make Chiefs related. He'll cut. I'll tell him, I'm like, you're cutting a Chiefs promo right now because it's like
Right.
he's basically just ripping off like an '80s pro wrestler,
Yeah.
and a lot of people don't get it. They just think he's being a jackass, but it's
Right.
cool. Like he's just taking, I can listen to it and go, okay, he's like
Yeah.
ripping
Yeah.
Macho Man or Ric Flair right now. So it's all football related. I'm like, this dude's cutting a real nice
Deep,
cheap.
deep promo. Yeah.
Yeah, real nice. Yeah.
So back to growing up in Kansas City. Do you have any siblings? Like who'd
Yeah,
you
I
grow
got
up with?
yeah, I've got two younger brothers. One lives in Dallas, one lives in like right outside LA. Um I'm 43, so everyone is, let's see, 38, 38, 40. No, geez, 38, 41. And then I got an older sister who's turning 46 this year.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, so there's four of us.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so Dallas, a brother in Dallas, brother in right outside LA, and my sister lives up in the Quad Cities,
Okay.
which is like the Iowa, Illinois state
Yeah.
line. I'm if she won't watch this, but I don't know what city you live in, and I'm so I think it's Milan, Illinois, but we just call it the Quad Cities because
Gotcha.
but
Growing up, was there much music in the house? Like,
there's a
was
lot. My
yeah.
dad's a musician.
Okay.
Yeah, he still gigs on the weekends.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, so he was in a ton of like prog rock bands in Kansas City in the 70s.
Sweet.
He was in a band called Wakefield that got a pretty good run in the Midwest. In the I want to say he graduated in 72. So it'd be like the early to mid 70s.
Okay. Prime
So he was
time for prog.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So he was bass player of that band. And their old recordings are awesome. Like I got oh, you can't see anything that's hung up, but um we have a bunch of like 7 inches from his
Nice.
band, that they recorded in like 75 maybe. But it's you can hear the drummer has like 10 toms, and
Yeah.
there's a killer keyboard player, and it's rad recordings. They did it. This is like 75, and I think the recording's awesome. Like it all sounds
Yeah.
badass,
Yeah. Yeah.
all on tape, of course. Um, yeah. So then, in the early '80s, he was in like, I really can't pinpoint the style. Like kind of this post prog. He was in a band called Legacy. Like they always had great names, which
Yeah.
was like Wakefield and Legacy, and like so there'd be all these, like, when I was a kid, I would see these promo photos, and they had like jackets, like these killer like '80s style jackets that say like Legacy on the back.
Nice.
So yeah, so I grew up with it. He didn't really like push music on me at all. I didn't start
Mhm.
playing an instrument till I was 13 or 14.
What was that instrument?
I tried playing bass. So my dad had a bass, and it was just kind of like, and that was like what he played.
Yeah.
And I think he could tell I didn't really have like, although now I have probably sometimes more interest in bass, I think, than drums at times. But at the time, he's just like, yeah, this kid doesn't really. I was playing sports, and he's like, he's not really taking the bass. And then about a year later, I think he could maybe tell that I was like like I was into like Genesis and Rush and stuff, and Zeppelin, which is like all this stuff that he was, grew up listening to. And it was because of like Phil Collins and Neil Peart and stuff. So,
Yeah. You seem to be like
and like,
a big
yeah,
Phil Collins fan.
yeah, I love Phil. He's like my favorite all time. Um, so being in the Genesis, and then like knowing that I was into like Nirvana and Soundgarden, which were like great drummers. So
Yeah.
that all just kind of like that just grabbed me more than anything else. So then I think like 95 they took me to get a drum set. So
Nice.
yeah.
So you just started getting into drums, and what was your first drum set?
I had a a drum set from a company called Zinkos, which was based out of Lawrence, Kansas, which was like the first acrylic drum set.
Nice.
To my, I think that's how that goes. I totally could be wrong. I haven't looked this up in years, but it was, to my understanding, it was like pre-Ludwig
Okay.
acrylic kits. So we went to like way south of the city in Raymore, Missouri, and they had this like double kick, two rack tom, two floor tom, and I remember it was like $400 or something, and we kept going in to do these drum lessons. I kept coming out just going like, "This is awesome." My dad's
Right.
like, "This kit's like, like 30 years old. It's like beat up," and they ended up buying it for me. And
Nice.
that
What,
was
how old were
yeah, it
you?
was like I was 14 maybe, 13,
Okay.
14. Um, so that was my first kit, and it's somewhere. I don't know who has it. It's somewhere in the city. I wish I could find it, but
Did you end
uh,
up selling it, or did you pawn it, or?
no. Like Gabe and my brothers were in bands in high school, and
Yeah.
um, I had moved on to Zinkos wasn't cool and hip,
Right.
which I had it now, but back then it was like, oh, I got to get a custom kit or I got to get a old Ludwig or something. So
Yeah.
I had moved on, gotten a couple different kits, and then just let people take it, whoever wanted it.
I have a
Could just
tremendous amount of, I've played in a bunch of bands, but like a tremendous amount of respect for drummers, because there's no way in hell I could do four different things at the same time. It's just not happening. Like I've tried it.
yeah.
I can get a basic beat going, but it is, yeah, I don't know what it
It's
is. I'm just not coordinated enough. Like my mind
yeah,
gets,
I think I don't really know what it was that other than like Dave Grohl bashing the drums, which in like 92 I saw the Nevermind video and just thought that that was awesome.
yeah,
And there's like that meat and potatoes of it, and then there was like the Phil Collins, like 20-piece drum kit,
right.
and
Tom
you know,
Fills, yeah.
yeah, like tom fills everywhere and cymbals everywhere, and you're doing stuff that I was like, I could never really do that. But it really wasn't until I heard Weezer and Pat Wilson that, you know, and I love Pat Wilson. I think Pat Wilson is like one of the most underrated drummers ever. If you listen to some like off the beat Weezer records, there's really cool drum stuff going on. Um, but like that Blue album, I was like, oh, I could play that. Like I
Mm-hmm.
can't play Phil Collins, and I can't hit as hard as Dave Grohl. Um, and it wasn't until I heard Weezer, I was like, oh, I think yeah, like I could play the Sweater song. Like that's
Yeah, 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 yeah.
really really easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My name is
Um,
Jonas, stuff like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
stuff like that. So that was like really the thing that, and then once I started doing that, it was like, oh, this maybe isn't as intimidating as I thought. Because I always had pretty good coordination. Like I played baseball and some growing up, and um, yeah, like the hand-eye coordination stuff was pretty okay for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really kind of amazing because I see like my 6-year-old, we don't let play video games a lot or anything like that. But we took him to a birthday party recently, and there were kids his age there who were just, it was like an arcade, who were just like so coordinated at what they were doing.
Oh yeah.
And like I said to my wife, she's like, I hate him playing video games. And I was like, yeah, but like his hand-eye coordination is not as good as these other kids. And like he could be like, I don't want him in video games all that much too, but the hand eye coordination, he's going to be playing different sports and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Like it's just amazing how rapidly that develops like
You know
that.
what's really good for that, and this is the only game I have on my phone. Um, like I hate being on my phone, but Lord knows I'm on it all the time. Is Tetris,
Okay. Yeah.
because it's like for me, it's just kind of like I feel like it helps.
Yeah. So
Just
I'm
kind of
I'm I'm in the mental health field. That's what I've been doing for the past 12 years. Is like this is my current office, uh, and there's been studies about actually Tetris and PTSD for veterans,
Oh, really?
And yeah, and that there's some kind of like neurological thing that happens with Tetris that has kind of like a calming effect
Nice. Yeah.
on things. So I find that really really interesting. Like in that
Yeah,
sense.
I'll do that, and there's a couple things that I'll do just to like kind of turn my brain off. I don't really have an issue with that. I'm pretty good about it, but sometimes if I'm just like overworked or there's too much going on, it'll be like I'll just play Tetris.
Yeah,
Um, or I'll like I love jazz music, so I'll listen to jazz, or sometimes I'll just go. There's a great jazz club in town. I'll go up to the jazz club and watch because like I wish I was better at jazz than I am because it is there's so much going on. And
sure. Yeah,
if you're listening or watching it, for me, like I'm trying to just like watch, especially like a real fast jazz tune. It's like, okay, like what fuck, there's like a
so much.
lot.
So yeah,
There's a lot, and so I'll just focus in on what everyone's doing, like what key this is in, and what's the drummer playing, and how is he coming in and out of of the groove, and where is it? It's just like a million different things. So that's really great for me just to go up and have a drink and go like, I'm not gonna think about anything for the next
yeah.
hour and just like focus.
Who's your favorite jazz drummer? Buddy Rich or
Yeah, I mean, Rich is cool. I love Jeff Hamilton. I took from I studied with a guy named Todd Strait also. Todd's one of my favorite jazz drummers, and Todd lives up in Portland. Um, and Todd is he kind of comes from the Jeff Hamilton school,
Mhm.
um, which is like why I wanted to study with him. He's from Kansas City, and he was here up until like 2021, I think. Um, So, but Jeff would be like my favorite. He's just so smooth, and you hear everything that he does. Where like some jazz drummers, like you'll struggle to hear ghost notes and definition of the symbols sometimes because it's just all about how they're digging into it. But with Jeff, it's like, and Todd as well, like you hear every single stroke of the stick. Like
Yeah.
yeah, it's awesome. And but Buddy Rich is like the god. Like,
You know that there's Buddy Rich references in Seinfeld?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'll take you outside and show you what it's like.
Let's see how you do up there without all the assistance.
Dude, that one is probably the best. 'Cause it just, it just is.
I've never
It,
heard those tapes, but
oh,
apparently
they're
they're
cool.
insane.
Oh, they're great. They're great. I think they're on YouTube. You can find them on YouTube. Like it is, and it's the way they're delivered, obviously, in the show too. Like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
fact that when that story came out, I remember we were like, "There's no way that these are Buddy Rich lines." And you find out that it's true, and it's like, how smart to recognize these
Right.
tapes that you hear years ago. You're like, you know what? This would be really fun
Yeah,
to,
let's put this in the episode.
yeah, because
I'm gonna have to take a break and explain this on the podcast
yeah,
for
right.
people.
The first time I heard that, like the Jason Alexander doing the, "I'll take you outside and show you what it's like." I remember just like, being in high school, and I was just like, "I'll take you outside and show you what it's
What it's
like."
like.
Holy shit, this is like this is next level like intimidation because
Right.
you've got someone screaming at you and they say something where you're like, this is, I got to think about this for a second.
It's
And if I have to
insane.
think about,
Yeah.
yeah, and if I have to think about this, the way that this guy is threatening me, this guy's probably going to kick my ass.
Uh, yeah. So I the sorry, I'm like transitioning in my mind. It's funny because in this podcast, like I love free flow conversation.
Sure. Yeah, me
It's
too.
just, it's just kind of like how it goes. And then I'm like, oh right, there's questions that I
Yeah.
probably should ask. And I just want to know like what are some of the first bands you got involved in?
That I was like listened to or
No, just
played
just
in.
in terms of like started playing with. Whether did you play in high school or
Yeah, so I was in, whatever bands in high school that, did nothing and, were terrible. And then in 99, maybe 2000, I can't remember. There was this band in Kansas City called Reflector, and Reflector was on. this label called Status Records in Southern California. But Reflector and the Casket Lottery and the Get Up Kids um, were like this kind of like trifecta band. Like they played together all the time. So
Hmm.
if you would go to a Reflector show, there would be, if Casket Lottery wasn't playing, Casket Lottery guys would be there, or Get Up Kids would be there, and we all liked Reflector. Like, they were a really cool trio. Well, the band split up. I think this was 2000. I think they split up in 2000, and I wasn't doing like fuck all with music. Like I was trying to be in bands and just wasn't having a ton of success. And then I just got on this Kansas City music forum randomly and was like, here's some influences. I think I wrote something like Sunny Day and,
Hmm.
was listening to a lot of Jimmy Eat World at the time and, um, fuck, like, I don't know, Snapcase, whatever I put down. And the singer of that band, like, sent me a message on the forum. It's just so weird. I don't know if you remember how forums used to like,
Oh yeah, yeah, totally. I
they
mean,
would
there was
like
a whole New Jersey
zigzag.
scene for him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. So you would zigzag, and it was so hard
yeah, to follow it.
to follow it. And yeah, he just was like, "Hey, yeah, I used to be in this band Reflector," and I was like, "Oh shit." And Jared, like, I think was falling out of the scene a little bit because he was like a fairly religious guy, and that wasn't I wouldn't say frowned upon, but just like he just didn't gel with a lot of people. I didn't give a fuck. Like I just wanted to play music, so I was like,
Right.
if this guy's like into religion, like I don't care. He's a really cool songwriter. Um, and yeah, we just went and met at, like a Denny's,
Nice.
and he had this bass player, this great guy Jeff Stevens, was a ripping bass player, and they were just like, yeah, just like let's start a new band. And the band was called Trelease, and it didn't really go a ton of places, but it immediately had like gave me credibility
In the
because of
scene. Yeah.
Jared. Yeah, because
Yeah.
of Jared and Reflector. And Reflector had the drummer of Reflector was Jake Cardwell, who owned CNC drums. So I don't know if you know CNC custom drums, but
Yeah.
yeah, so there's like this whole intertwine with Reflector and the Kansas City music scene that still kind of lives on today because of Jake and his involvement, you
Right.
know,
Yeah. Awesome.
music industry with its drums. So um yeah, so we did an EP, maybe two, or I think the second one we didn't finish, but um, the bass player of this group, Shiner from Kansas City, which
Yeah.
we're all, huge fans of. His name's Paul Malinowski, and he took us up to Matt Talbot's studio in
Okay.
Champaign, Illinois, and we cut like a 6-song EP there with Paul. So we went up there
Nice.
for like 3 or 4 days, and the EP's awesome. I think it's a cool EP,
Yeah.
all on tape. It was like right around the time they did the Egg, Shiner's The Egg album.
Okay.
Um, and like I loved that record, and I had like the same drums as Gherkin, like a Blue Vista like kit. And I was like, just make the drums sound like you did on the Egg. Like, okay,
Yeah.
cool. And they kind of do, playing not nearly as good, but it was a cool EP. Sounds great. And that kind of like gave a little more credibility because I think knowing that Paul had done that record and we had gone to Matt's studio and
Yeah.
then from there it was like Dead Poetic. I got a gig with them after that.
Well, going back a little bit, how did you get into the scene? Like, there's a gap between Phil Collins
Yeah. Well,
and like Sunny Day Real
like
Estate.
getting into the scene was just like anything else. Like I just went to shows.
Yeah.
Like once I started playing drums, I just went. There was a place called New Earth Coffee House here in town, which was all ages, and it was at a church, and they mostly did Christian shows. Um, and then there was a place called G Coffee, which was more secular, but like that was really kind of about it, unless like some places. There was a place called Daily Grind, which wasn't, I think, doing shows really much in the late 90s. So I either had to wait for like a record store to do an all ages show, or go way out to like Olathe, Kansas, which was half an hour from us to go to this coffee shop, or would go to the city to go to this church that had a venue in the basement.
Yeah.
And you just met everyone there. Like it wasn't, even though they were doing just a lot of like Christian bands, there was a lot of like we would call we would call them fake Christians because we'd be like,
Right.
yeah, I love Christian music. Could you please book my band? Because we didn't really have anywhere else to go. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
you would hear
Makes a lot
about,
of sense.
yeah, you would hear like, it's like Mike's band is playing there. Pretty sure Mike is like 19 with two kids and,
Yeah.
is a terrible person and worships Satan, but he was able to convince them that, his band was all God loving,
Right.
so um but that is part of like where, I just ran into a lot of people that um eventually became, I don't know, the scene kings of Kansas City,
Yeah.
people that hung out till the wee hours in the morning. And
Well, at that time, you also had the rise of like Tooth and Nail uh, bands. I would
yeah,
say around the late '90s,
yeah,
early
like they're
2000s.
like Pedro the Lion
Yep,
they were,
was on and
yeah, still are a big fan of Pedro, but that was, I would say Bazan was probably the leading. I'm 43, so all of the guys around my age, like Bazan, led the charge of like leaving your religion a little bit,
yeah, yeah.
So
And you had a lot of like adjacent stuff too. Chad Johnson had God, what was the name of that label? It's killing me. Take Hold was he? Yeah,
oh
Take
no,
Hold.
Chad had Take Hold. Yep,
Yeah, that's
yep,
right. And so like while it was not necessarily like a Christian based label, like
yeah,
you had bands like 238. Hopesfall was on there.
Hopesfall did No Wings to Speak of. I
Yeah,
believe was on Take Hold or something before No Wings. Maybe I think it was maybe whatever the case, but
right.
um, I saw when I was doing Dead Poetic, I think, or how did I run into Chad? I think I ran into Chad maybe after Hope's Fall. I can't remember, but I mean, we all like 238, you
Right.
know. Yeah, I still think that second record is really good. It doesn't get enough.
Does that
Um,
matter as a breaking point, or are you talking about Regulate the
like
Chemicals?
Regulate the
That is
Chemicals.
by far one of my favorite albums.
Yeah, it's a killer record. It's a
Yeah,
killer record.
I got to talk with Jake Brown about it. Who Jake is the bass player who played on
Mhm.
Regulate the Chemicals. I think it's probably one of the most underrated albums out there.
Yeah,
Like,
that's awesome. Like it
um,
sounds really good.
yeah, it sounds
Um,
fantastic for the age of it. I mean, I think Caraba sings on a couple of the songs
does
too.
he really?
Yeah, yeah, he did
Wow,
background vocals, I think, on like
no
one or two
way.
of the songs.
Yeah, I mean, I knew
They,
they were. Yeah, they're Florida guys. So,
well, they
so
were they were recording Regulate the Chemicals with James Paul Wisner, and James had like I guess just like an apartment that he was doing recording in, and it was kind of this weird setup. But I think Chris was laying down vocals for The Moon Is Down at the same time.
oh, okay.
So there was just some cross, and I think Chris Staples was like, "Hey, do you mind singing on like a couple background vocal
That's
stuff?"
awesome. Yeah, I had no
Uh,
idea.
so they got him, yeah. So to do that, there's like a little bit of video of it as well.
That's crazy. I've talked to Karava many times about that era of music. Um,
Yeah,
and he's never mentioned that. I also don't think I've ever mentioned 238. So like,
yeah.
but
If you look on the CD,
is it
it
on
says
there?
yeah, it says Chris
Oh,
Caraba appears via courtesy of Tooth and Nail Records.
okay, that makes sense. I think I've only, I think I've only owned a illegally burned copy of that record.
Oh,
And then it was hard to get. Like
yeah,
I remember like I had a buddy that had it. We couldn't find it anywhere. You had to go to like a Christian
yep. You had
store
to go to a Christian
to get
bookstore
it.
to get it.
And like, what's like? It's like walking into a Christian bookstore, you're like, you have a 238 record? And I'm like, we don't know
Right.
who that is. Like, okay, fucking whatever. Um, yeah, so it's like, and then, by the time I was like revisiting it, it was, we had streaming, we had iTunes and all that shit.
Right.
So
Which is hard to find that album because specifically when you look it up, like I think it's under just Chris Staples music.
under Discover
Like
America
that's
on
right. Yeah.
Spotify, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's dumb.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's really weirdly placed. And I'm not
yeah,
sure
and
why that
like
is,
who
but
knows who's in charge of it?
yeah.
Like I don't know if that's Staples doing
Right.
or um but I don't know who owns the rights to that record. I don't know if it's Tooth and Nail. Um,
I
and I'll
can
say
see
like
that.
as much as I like that record, I don't think like I have like two friends that really like it as well. I think if they did like an album or like a vinyl release, I don't know if it would get any movement at all. Like
Right.
I don't know if there's enough people that give a shit about it,
Right.
which is sad because
Yeah,
it's
I
a
know. I know. I would
cool
say
record.
that when that came out, like just some friends, because like I said, I was at Oral Roberts University and we had friends who were kind of into the scene and stuff like that. And like, because you're Christian, you're like, what Christian music can I get my hand, like cool Christian music can I get my hands on? And like one of my friends was like 238, like listen to them. And we happened to go see them at this really, really small coffee shop. And what I remember about it was like I felt so bad. There was like nobody there.
Yeah.
There's maybe like 5 to 6 people there, like watching, and they look. And I talked to Jake about this too, and he was like, I don't know. I was like, they looked. Chris was sick. They looked like they seemed like they were on their last legs
Yeah.
of like as a touring band.
Yeah.
Like, and I wouldn't blame them, but they just looked like run down.
Yeah, we saw him at the tail. Well, I saw him at Cornerstone in 2000, and they were really good. And didn't see them again until a handful of years later when they were like on their last leg. They
Yeah.
put out their last record. They'd had a new drummer, new bass player. I think the guitar, Chris and the other guitar player were maybe the same, or
Yeah,
it was just
pretty good. I think it's Kevin and Chris were the kind of
yeah,
like the
yeah, Kevin, yeah.
yeah,
And it was like it was a little rough. It was a little rough. Like
yeah.
yeah, they didn't have the strongest rhythm section with them um, at that point,
It was probably
and
the You Should Be Living. They were probably
yeah,
touring off
yeah,
of that. Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
and it
let's
was just
let's get back to really quickly. Dead Poetic.
yeah.
How did you hook up with those guys? And
That was kind of random. So in 2003, longtime good buddy of mine, Sam Hoskins, great drummer. Sam got a gig with Project 86.
okay,
And so that's 2003. And I think Project maybe did a tour with Dead Poetic. Um, and then in '04, beginning of '04, Sam calls Nathan Richardson, who's like one of my longtime best friends and the original drummer for Casket
yeah,
Lottery. And so he calls Nathan and it's like, hey, you want to go do this gig? And this was like really the first time that like me playing with Casket Lottery had come up. So it's like um, before they had split, there was a couple things that Nathan was going to do, and we would sit in his basement and play Casket Lottery songs. And he's like, all right, well, if I can't ever do this Casket gig, like you should go do it. And so this started in like '02, '03, maybe I can't remember. But anyway, so he goes to do Casket Lottery kind of ends up splitting up. So he goes to do this Dead Poetic gig, and they tour with Pompa Roach, uh,
nice.
which is funny. So he's out on the gig, and he calls me. I would probably say once or twice a week he's out doing this gig and just like chit chatting, checking in, and that's around the time that he is talking to Appleseed Cast
Okay,
to take over the gig for them. And so he's out with Dead Poetic. He's like, I think I'm gonna go do Appleseed Cast. I'm like, okay, cool. And yeah, he's just like they've got like headlining shows for the rest of the year. Like, do you want to do it? And at that time, Trelease was had broken up. I'd started this kind of like alt rock band with some close friends, and um, it
Was
was
this new medicines phase
this
or
was
was
New
it?
Medicines. Yeah,
Okay.
this is New Medicines era. And so I was kind of so Trelease had broken up, which was like something I was really trying to. I thought was like a good band and like get off the ground, find a
Yeah.
label, all this, all this stuff that you could still do back in the day. And I was that band broke up. I was in a different band. That band was spinning its wheels. I just wanted to play and tour, and Nathan called me. He's like, "You should do this Dead Poetic gig," and talked to those dudes, and they just flew me to. I sat in a rehearsal space for like 2 months learning both records, and flew to Dayton, and then we did like a 2 month run. So
Nice. Awesome. I
yeah, it was
haven't been
cool.
on a Papa Roach tour. That's a interesting
I don't know. I remember talking to Nate and just being like, he's like, "Oh, we're at the drummer's place in like Sacramento, and he's married to Steven Tyler's daughter, and we're having a barbecue." And I was just like, "What?" But the Dead Poetic tour was really good. That
That's
was
a
like
fantastic album, and the EP before that, was it an EP?
that was a full length.
Had Stereo Child on it, and
Yeah, it
yeah,
was a full length. I think we only did like 2 or 3 tracks off of that, and then we just basically played the whole New Medicines record every night.
Dead Poetic is one of those bands that I think people are really, at least on like when you go on like different forums, or not forums, but like Facebook groups, or even when Furnace Fest was, uh, going, they were, asking about who I'd like to see at Furnace Fest. Like
Yeah,
Dead Poetic was one of those bands that
yeah,
like everybody was like, please get these guys back together.
yeah. I could see
Um,
that. Yeah,
yeah,
it was a lot of fun to play those songs. Like Jesse Sprinkle played drums on that New Medicines record, and he's a great drummer. And he eventually like took out like when that tour concluded, there were brief conversations with like me continuing on with them.
mm-hmm.
Um, but I kind of had some other offers, and I didn't really want to move to Dayton, Ohio. No
Yeah.
offense to Ohio or Ohio, but then Jesse Sprinkle, like who played on that record, ended up joining the band. He's
Right.
never. I don't think we've ever crossed paths, but he's a great drummer.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he wrote a lot of really good parts.
What were some of the offers you were getting?
Well,
Dead Poetic.
there was this band Vedera, which was a really great band from Kansas City, and I had grown up with those kids, and they had put out a record on Second Nature recordings, and Eva at Feta booking
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
was booking them, and then Nick and Kenny, who was Thrice's management, flew to Kansas City to see a show, and the drummer of that band at the time was the guitar player's brother, who was just he was like a sophomore, junior in high school, and I had grown up with those kids, and they were like, "We're getting all these offers to do these tours with like, Me Without You, and I think it was Mute Math, and um, Thrice. We did a Thrice and Under Oath tour. We kind of sounded like it was. Everyone compared the band to Denali, if you remember that band.
Yeah.
Rilo Kiley kind of stuff like that. It was
Mm-hmm.
very much, it's kind of like that. It was a great band, and um, yeah, so that was like I could stay home, I could stay in Kansas City, and play with people that I'd grown up with, great songs, and it was kind of the same. They were like really like the new hot thing,
Yeah.
and I knew it was temporary because Drew was going to be back in like 18 months, but they had a lot of touring, and in hindsight, it was the best decision because it led me down the path I'm in right now. But
I
I don't
remember
think,
that Thrice Under Oath tour. What was that, like 2005 or
yeah,
2004?
2005, Thrice, Under Oath, Bled, and Vedera. So we were
Yeah.
the yeah
Oh,
we were the
okay.
yeah we were the first band on that bill.
Okay. because
Yeah,
I believe that I saw that tour at the Electric Factory
yeah, in Philly.
in Philly. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I was going to school in South Jersey, and that
Yeah,
was just a
I
hop, skip, and a jump over.
that's one of the like many shows I remember like vividly.
Yeah.
Like my first
It
time
was
there.
big. It's a pretty big venue.
It was a
Like,
big venue, and I'd known of it. It was a historic venue um, at the time, and I remember getting there like this is a big deal. It's a
yeah.
big deal. Like it was
Yeah.
sold out. Like it was just we were on the East Coast. My first, well, it wasn't my first time on the East Coast, but it was my second time on the East Coast in a year, and like that's I thought that was pretty cool. Like oh okay, like I'm getting paid to do this. So like there's certain memories of that tour specifically that's very vivid in my mind because it was the first time I was like, oh, okay, maybe this will work out for
Yeah.
me, you know.
Yeah.
So there's just like you have all that excitement, which is easy to remember.
The Electric Factory, I just had a and my last episode was with Joe Mara from the early November, and they're, from South Jersey, and um he was saying how like their only goal, or like their biggest goal, was like, we got to play the Electric Factory. Like that was the main deal. The Theater of the Living Arts over there too was like on South Street, was a huge venue. Like
Yeah,
I saw Further when John Bunch was with them, and These Arms Are Snakes and Copeland and Sparta and like all these bands
that's
that
a
would
cool
go through
venue.
there as
Yeah.
well. Yeah, super cool.
I've,
I saw Mute Math there too.
oh yeah, I've only been there once. Surprising all these years, but TLA
Yep,
called.
awesome venue. Um,
Cool.
so you get, what's your next move after that?
So after Vedera was before that there was so when Dustin Nadler, um, who was the guitar player for Hopesfall,
Yeah,
he did A Types and Magnetic
Magnetic
North.
and
But
Arbiter
what's that?
and Arbiter.
Was Dustin on Orbiter?
Yeah,
I thought that was Ryan.
nope,
Is it Dustin? Okay.
it's Dustin. Yeah,
Um, so Dustin leaves Kansas City to join Hopesfall as they're like writing A Types, and they go to do that record, and um, Adam Morgan quit.
right.
So Dustin calls me in when was that? End of '03, maybe? Whenever it was. So they're in New York cutting that record. And I remember Dustin like calling me and like Morgan quit, but Adam Baker, like is gonna come in and do this record. And he and I like talked like, oh fuck, like it'd be cool if you could do this record or whatever. And I'm like, oh well, I'm because they had seen me come through. Or no, how did that work? This was after, so they cut their. So he calls me to tell me that Morgan left. I'm gonna fuck up the story, but when I was with Dead Poetic, we stayed with Josh and Dustin in
Okay, North
Charlotte,
Carolina, Charlotte. Yeah,
and so um, Josh and Dustin give me a copy of the record, and we're like, they'd come to the show, and they were like, oh, Dustin's like, oh, it could have been cool had you been able to do the record or like whatever, and it was just kind of like this brief conversation where I was like, yeah, like that would have been awesome, whatever. Um, And then a year later with Vedera on that Thrice tour, and I knew in the summertime too, like the summer of '05, Dustin was like, we got to kick Adam Baker out, or he left. I can't remember what the stipulations were, but Adam Baker ends up out of the band, and I think Morgan came back to fill in
to
for
do
some stuff.
touring. Yeah,
Yeah, and but didn't want to be in the band anymore. So they were like, "Hey, we're gonna come to this thrice gig in Charlotte." And I kind of knew then, just because of all the conversations that Dustin and I had. He's like, in January, when you're done with this tour, you get through the holidays, like fly to Charlotte and we'll play through some stuff. I was like, okay. So, yeah, I went out there in January of '05.
okay,
And so that was the next step. Then Vedera had all this touring done or ready in '05. And I was just like, well, your brother will eventually come back. I love you guys, but I can go actually be in a band and
Okay.
write a record, and like this is your guys' thing. If it's not gonna be permanent for me, then I'm gonna move on. So I
So
was
you were mostly like touring drumming. You weren't
I was
necessarily
was hopping
concretely like,
around.
yeah,
Yeah, didn't
yeah,
care. Like I was like, whether you're gonna put, I was like, you're either gonna put me in the band or not, you know,
right.
or don't make me move. Like I didn't want to move to Dayton. Um, Vedera had Drew Little, who's a this insane drummer. He's so great, even when he was younger. You know, it just pissed everyone off because he was like 16 and this like great drummer. And so it's like, but that was his gig, and like
Yeah,
he deserved that gig, and um, no way did I ever want to like try to take it. So it was
yeah.
like, well, I'm just gonna go do this thing. So I left Vedera and then just went to Charlotte, moved to Charlotte, and we did um, Magnetic North. Wrote it, recorded it.
Mike Watts, right?
What's that?
Mike Watts.
With Mike
Yeah.
Watson, New York. Yeah, yeah,
He
yeah.
did A types too, right?
A types. I think he did the Orbiters too. Um,
Yes, he did. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
like he's awesome. We've gone back and forth on Instagram a little bit
Hmm.
over the years, but not really much. He was awesome to work with. Like to this day, still like the best studio experience I've ever had with Mike.
As far as not being a concrete member of the band, what is that something like you really wanted, or you just enjoyed being, a touring drummer?
I like being a touring drummer. When I got to Charlotte, they made me a member of the band,
Right.
even though it was, whatever it was, technically a year and a half. Um, and I liked the writing process of doing that record. I look back on it now as like such a struggle to
Mm.
do it, because it should not have been a democracy. It should have been Dustin and Josh and
Josh is
every
too nice.
yeah, yes, and everyone else get the fuck out of the way.
Yeah.
And I did for the most part. Like there's still a lot of stuff on that record that was a Josh idea on drums that I just took and ran with, or a Mike Watts idea that I would take and run with. Because I don't really care. Like if you have a better idea, like
Sure.
couldn't fucking care less. But that was a democracy where everyone wanted their idea to get through. And it was like me, the new guy, and then Mikey, the bass player, Mikey was like, I just want to play music. And so it was like Mikey and I just going like, you
By the
know,
way, what a name, Mike Tyson. I'm sure that
yeah,
didn't
Mike
haunt
Tyson the
him.
best.
Yeah.
I haven't talked to Mike in years, but he was an absolute sweetheart. Um, really, and a great bass player. Like, I really like playing with him. But yeah, it was like we tried to run it as a democracy, and I was sitting there being like, I like the fact that I'm like getting, one fifth credit for this record, and that you've let me sign these contracts and be a part of all this. But in the back of my mind, it was at a lot of times I was like, what are we doing? Like,
Mm.
fucking just pay me to be here and I'll play. So I started leaning towards that more because it was so hard to do that record. We were rehearsing and writing every day, and it was just like it was constant
Do you think it was
uncertainty.
because like maybe it's something you weren't used to as well, being like a concrete member and just kind of like, hey, your input is as valuable
No,
as
because
everybody else's?
I had been with Trelease, which was a band, that first real band that I was in. There was a band for 3 years, and we probably wrote 25 or 30 songs, and but it was very like Jared led. So Jared was the
Okay.
singer songwriter, and Jared would come in with the song, and like if it wasn't flowing right, Jeff and I would say something, and Jeff and I would put our spin on it, and we would find. And still to this day, it's a lot of like the favorite songs that I've been a part of was like that first band, probably for many reasons, like nostalgia, um, being a big part of it. But I think because that's always been my favorite way of writing is like there's a guy that's going to lead the charge, and I
Sure.
just need you guys to help me get to the finish line.
Yeah.
I need you guys to push me through because like I can play guitar, I can't fucking write a song to save my life, but I understand like what the guitar and bass are doing. So if you could just come up with the cool shit, like
Right.
maybe I as a drummer can understand what you're doing and help you get to where we need to go with it, whether it be with dynamics or anything. So it wasn't that I wasn't used to it. It was just it was and I love the record. I went back and listened to it somewhat recently. Well, I guess maybe last year, for the first time in a long time, and I'm like, it's a cool record. Like
It
it,
is. Yeah.
yeah,
It's a wonderful record.
yeah. I was like,
It's
oh,
a natural evolution, I think, from A types, like crossed a little bit with satellite years. Like it's a little bit
yeah,
more evolved, a little more ethereal
yeah. I
because
think
of
that's the
Dustin's
cool part
playing.
about it is that it's Josh and Dustin were able to find the best of both worlds. Like I really liked the riffs on A types
Mhm.
like a lot. Like I remember when they gave me that record, I was like, there's some fucking killer riffs here. I know people trashed that record when it first came out,
I love
but
it. I think it's
yeah,
amazing.
I
Yeah.
think it's great. And I was just going like, you guys trash this all you want, but this is fucking. There's some killer guitar stuff happening
Yeah.
here. And then I think it blended with Satellite Years. So I think that, um, and I only recently thought that because I hadn't listened to it for a long time, but I was like, oh, okay, we did a pretty good job of representing, I think, what the old school fans wanted, and then what those kind of new school Hopesfall fans were used to.
Yeah.
Um,
I know
I
the
just,
goal, at least for Arbiter, because I've talked to both Jason, sorry, not Jason, Josh and Ryan on this podcast.
uh,
But like when they came into to Arbiter, that Mike Watts, I mean, Josh told me this was like he wanted them to get into a headspace of Magnetic North and Satellite Years,
yeah,
like a mix of that
yeah,
together.
yeah. And I've listened to it a couple times. I think they did a pretty good job. Is it Arbiter? Is that what it's called? I think I
Yeah.
said Arbiter earlier. I'd like to apologize to my old friends. Uh, but no, I think I kind of. It's funny that Mike said that to them because I can hear that.
Yeah.
And my that's what I really loved about Mike working with him was like he was able to bring out the best of the band's sound
Yeah.
without compromising because Mike didn't produce A types. He was just the engineer on that record.
Right.
Um, so when we went to do Magnetic North, I just felt like Mike understood the band and he understood, maybe A types wasn't maybe A types was too soon.
Sure.
Maybe it steered too far away from the sound that had made the band popular. So I don't know, he just like really, I think was able to give the best of both worlds, yeah, to the band.
How much money in poker did you take away from Josh and
It was Jay. It was mostly Jay. Josh, I don't think ever played. Dustin, maybe, and his ADD would not allow him to play for longer than 20 minutes. And then Mikey was like sneaky good. Not Mikey was sneaky good. Like you just would not suspect. Jay, though, being the aggressive, better and poker player, I think he'll
did you
deny
play
it.
common cool or on
Yeah,
your
yeah,
side
yeah.
or
I'm a very like strategic, conservative poker player,
yeah.
even to this day. Um, Jay likes to like go back and forth and switch it up, and I'm just trying to catch him when he's on the wrong side of things. But yeah, we played a lot of poker.
um just getting a little bit into the nitty gritty of Magnetic North. Like, first of all, what's your favorite song on that album? The one they
Uh,
didn't put on?
Jesus Christ! Don't even get me started.
Well, that's the point.
Did you talk to Josh about that?
Uh, oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Because I asked him, I said, "What was the moment that made you quit?"
Yeah.
And he was like,
Saskatchewan.
"Yeah, Saskatchewan." It was like when I got the call from Jay that said that they were leaving that out of the record. Yeah, it was funny to get that conversation's a really funny conversation just
Yeah.
because he was like the label was like nobody wants like a 14 song track. He was like I fucking do. Like it's mine.
100%. Josh, the owner of Trustkill, he might be a
You were
nice.
the one to put out a statement.
I put out multiple statements like fuck this guy. Like cuz I
Yeah,
didn't have a dog. I mean, my dog in the fight was this was my record. Like, bro, I
right,
don't know. Like I was like I don't know you, dude.
right.
Like there's no reason for us to have beef. Like so like why are you doing this? Like why are you ruining this record? And it was just in spite of Josh and like Josh's feelings towards the label, and um, he just wanted to fuck with us. Like he didn't care. He knew
Hmm.
it was the last record on Trustkill, no matter what, and whether the band continued or not, there would be no relationship outside of um, the past history. But it was just like such a shitty thing to do, you know. Like people that defend him is, or it's I just don't get it. Oh, it's a business decision. He's in the business of making money. Okay, one song
Right.
is make or break your business.
I
Like
mean, for
fuck
Josh, he said that was for him the linchpin of the album, like
it. It's we all speaking with Jay and Roe, our management and the band. If there was one thing the band could agree on, it was when you got to Saskatchewan on the record, it took a completely different turn.
Hmm.
And if you listen, if I think there's a release out there with it now. I got an email a few years ago, or I think they were texting me a few years ago
You can
saying there's
listen to it on Spotify. There's a
yeah,
there's a
and there was like
bonus.
there was
Yeah.
good I think a release that
There were
came
some
out,
demo releases too. Yeah.
and they're like Saskatchewan's going to be on it. I'm like, okay, cool. Uh,
Where was that supposed to be placed in the? I've
um,
always
so,
been trying to figure out where that was supposed to be placed.
yeah, so it was supposed to be right after the title track.
Okay.
Um, if I remember correctly, there's the song Magnetic North, which is like a minute and a half maybe,
Right.
and which to ask your might be my favorite song, um, because
Saskatchewan
or
or
no,
magnetic.
Magnetic North, um, because the way that I always viewed it was like there's this really kind of heavy, like the record opened really heavy, and there,
I love that first track.
yeah, like a lot of some aggression in the first half of that record. And then you got to Magnetic North, and it was really big, and it's like weird half tiny drums and weird noises, and Jay's vocals are just like ascending. Like it was this. I remember in the studio, and when it was getting mixed, was just like this is the best song to break up this record. Like you've
Yeah.
got the first half of it. Here's the title track, and here's this other half, which is also still aggressive at times. But you had, if you go back and listen to it, there's the Canon and
Hmm.
Concubine, which
Yeah.
is which was one song, but we split it into two tracks. But that was one song. There's Head General Hospital, which has like a very long outro to it.
Right.
Um, I think there's like one other track in there too. There's like the last track on that record, which is like
Paisley, I
95.
think it's called,
Yeah,
or
basically.
something. Yeah.
Um, so it just broke everything up, and even Saskatchewan is like a kind of drawn out long. There's a lot happening in it, you know,
Yeah.
especially during the bridge. So it just we were like kind of fast and aggressive and moving, and then the second half is a little more like drawn out and um, just tells a completely different story too. Um,
I feel like as fans, we really got robbed in terms of touring off of that record.
yeah,
Um,
I think so. I've
you
always thought that
know,
way.
I think that's the one thing you can find after everybody quit. You can find like maybe Swamp Kittens being played with like Jay with like a totally different band
Yeah.
going on at that point. But like sometimes the guys will play live. They'll play RX. Is RX the contender? Yeah,
RX
the
contender,
pre-contender.
RX contender, RX contender,
The pretender. Yeah, which seems like an insanely hard uh, uh track to play live. Um, just it seems like there's a lot of timing changes in it, or I could be wrong, but like it,
um, I think it's probably it was the easiest. I think that was like the easiest song to try.
I would have thought like Ad Vacation Ad would be the easiest because it's got the most like
That's easy.
solid.
Yeah. Yeah, that one and RX were really easy for me to do because those are
Yeah,
both kind of like up my alley.
so they'll play that live sometimes now. Like I think they played it at Furnace Fest. Um, but that's one of my favorite tracks coming. But like yeah, like there was no obviously touring off of it.
Yeah.
This album comes out. That album came out in a really seminal part of my life. Like there's a huge amount of changes going on. Like I had just broken up with like my girlfriend of 4 years, and I was like, "Fuck this! I'm moving to Seattle." Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was a huge album in terms of that.
Well,
So,
it's one of the strangest breakup albums
right,
that I've ever heard.
yeah,
Jay is a very interesting and unique lyric writer.
yes, he is. I can never figure out what the fuck he's talking about, but it's
He's
mostly
a lot of it was, and I would never put words in his mouth. I interpreted just being around him every day and the struggles that he was going through with a past relationship. It was all a lot of that,
yeah,
and I think some struggles, other struggles, in that he was around, not necessarily maybe even his life. Like I think maybe there's maybe a part that I remember him saying was a "fuck you" to Trustkill in
mm,
there somewhere, very subtle. But a lot of it is like like an old ex.
right.
It's remember like getting really focusing in on the lyrics when we got before the record comes out, you have to approve all the art and all the thank yous and all that bullshit in there. And I remember like going through and going like, oh, I've actually got Jay's lyrics and like listening to it at home. It's going like, fuck, man, like what is going on
Yeah,
inside that head? Like but in a cool way. But
yeah,
like I did think I'm like, this is. I remember thinking, I'm like, this is the one of the more interesting breakup records
albums,
because
yeah.
really at that time that was um I feel like him putting like a past relationship to bed and a couple of years later met his wife, his now wife. I think they've got a few
Three
kids.
kids, yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
yeah, I just got a Christmas card from them with a new baby on it. And um
I've been
yeah.
fortunate enough to hang out with the band. Um, I think like I randomly during their Arbiter run at contacted Adam was like I would it's like, hey, do you mind if I brew a beer for you guys just for the album release and we can like I'll just ship it to you or whatever. So we got into correspondence like that.
Nice.
And so we still like text or not text, I'm sorry, like message each other. And when I went to Furnace Fest, we ended up me and Chad, Austin, not Austin, I forget what his last name is, Chad Waldrop and Adam all got beers together and just kind of
Nice.
hung out.
Yeah.
Um,
Those are good dudes.
yeah,
Real good
I
dudes.
mean,
That
Josh is really, really nice.
they all were so like when I moved there, they all were nobody needed to be nice and cool to me, but they were all
Yeah.
everyone just was like everyone that knew the band just like immediately made me feel like I was at home. Adam included. Like Adam was the OG drummer and Chad was an OG member, and we'd see him around town, and it was all like
All
chill.
good. Yeah. Now, was the band like Jason? Whatever you want to say, like you can say it, or were you just
No, I
like,
don't know. That's never. I've never really asked anyone. Uh, I'm better now these days, but I've never asked anyone if I could say anything. I was living in LA. I'd moved. The band broke up, and I moved to LA. And so the record had been out, and Jay was talking about getting new members, and I'm living in, I think I was staying down in like Long Beach or something. And this kid had reached out to me because I had made some posts on like a MySpace, and I'd gone to like a torrent site. I was like, if anybody wants demos
yeah,
that maybe belong to Trustkill or Saskatchewan, I was like, if you want Saskatchewan, here, go fucking get it. Like,
yeah,
so I got online and was like, you guys can have this song. Like, fuck this guy for taking it off. And which Josh did not like. Not Josh Grabel, I think is his last name. Um, he didn't love that, and
you said you guys were doing some hard drugs.
uh,
Like,
idiot. So what happens? So this kid ends up like messaging me. It's so funny. I've never done a drug in my life, and like I'm just like trying to think of what like there were no drugs around,
right,
like my time in Hopesfall whatsoever. And but this kid just did like some radio or I don't even know what it was, but he just like sent me a message. He's like, hey, I'm a Hopesfall fan, and I see that there's this stuff going on, and it seems interesting and crazy. I'm like, yeah, call me. Here's my number. Like, I don't give a
yeah,
shit. So he calls me. I remember like at this bar, like in Long Beach. And I'm like, hello. And he's like, hey, this is so and so. I'm like, yeah, yeah, what's up? He's like, do you care if I hit record and just ask you some questions? I'm like, yeah, let me go outside. So I just remember like walking, pacing back and forth on this sidewalk, and he's like asking me questions. And I was just like, yeah, fuck this guy. Like this guy, fuck. Like it just sucks. I was like, we worked really hard on this record, and he basically broke up the band. And I mean, it's our decision, but like when you've got, some dipshit that's like trying to sabotage your record, it doesn't make you want to go out and work
right,
hard for that guy.
right.
So and then that kid messaged me and was like, after he had talked to Josh Grabel and was like, yeah, he's saying you guys were doing like hard drugs and this stuff. And I go, well, I just remember one of the last things I said about it. I was like, if his rebuttal is these guys are doing hard drugs, then he doesn't have fucking anything to say
Right,
because like if none of the allegations were true about holding sound scan numbers, withholding payment for the record, which you did, like we had to stop recording one weekend because he hadn't paid Mike Watts.
there's like touring issues, right, with
Yeah, I mean, dude, I mean the list
us.
of
Yeah,
yeah, it's a laundry list of things. So I love that he said that because one, it's like I know the truth, my friends and family knew the truth, the band knew the truth. Um, it's like what's the worst thing that's going to happen? A bunch of kids that like the band are going to hear that a rock and roll band does drugs and
right,
alcohol. Oh my God, never happened before. So
right.
the fact that he like went down that road, I was like, this is great. I think maybe some of the band guys were not stoked that I did that. But I'm like, guys, if this is the only thing that he can say about this was like, we did some drugs and we know
Right.
that we didn't, I'm like, first of all, who gives a fuck? I'm sure everyone in this band had done drugs, I think, except for me. Um, Maybe even I don't even think Dustin had really fucked around with anything either. And I don't even know what Josh or Jay had done. Maybe like some people had smoked pot around me. Like,
Right, right. Oh my
you know what I
God.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know what anyone.
It wasn't believable when he said
No,
it.
it
Like,
wasn't. It was just, and again, it's like even if so, like, who cares? It's like one of my, or some of the best records that have ever been created. Like
people
the
were stoned,
Beatles,
yeah.
yeah, Beatles are fucking on
LSD.
acid, yeah,
Yeah.
LSD, like all this stuff, and we're like, oh my God, Dark Side of the Moon. I can't believe they did drugs during that album recording. The record sucks. Um, So yeah, it was like, and that kid tried to get me to do like another interview, and I was like, I'm good ending this year.
Yeah.
Like, this is Josh has like put his foot in his mouth, and I can't really think of a way to rebuttal against
Something.
somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm like he kind of made a fool of himself, and and then
And the label ended up folding anyway.
yeah, it's like the label folded, and he ended up selling, I think, his catalog, and it's whatever. I mean, I met the guy like twice,
Yeah.
and he's a cheese dick, and he brought he people with him when he flew to Charlotte to blow smoke up our ass, and uh, it was just like it was just weird.
Yeah.
Like he wanted to be in a rock band, and he didn't have any skill to be a musician, so he started doing a label, and he thought that he was more important than the bands, and typically when that happens, you're gonna fall on your ass because the bands will always be more important, especially now.
Yeah.
You don't need a label, but bands will always be more important than your
Yeah. People
label.
aren't loyal to the label, they're loyal to the bands. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
they don't
yeah.
give a fuck. I mean, there was
Yeah.
that era where it was like, oh my god, victory. There's a victory sign on the
Right. Or Equal
back of
Vision
that
or,
TV.
yeah, or something like that.
Yeah,
But
but yeah, I couldn't have. We flirted with switching over to RCA.
okay.
There were some talks with RCA, I think. Um, but RCA wasn't. Josh was asking for so much because that was around the time where like Victory, like Tony was making so much money off of selling the rights to his band
Right.
to users. Josh was trying to do that same thing, but it's like, well, we're not taking back Sunday. Like we're
Right.
not worth as much as them. So stop asking for like let us go. Ask for a reasonable amount of money, and we'll go somewhere else.
Yeah.
To but he wouldn't do that. So um, he thought we were going to be something that we weren't. Also, that was the other problem.
So let's get into like your management side. Like you start is after Hostful, did you transition into doing management or like what was that?
Yeah, like I went to LA to try to play drums professionally. I had one gig um, and just didn't like the culture out there, and um, never saw myself living in Los Angeles. I was like, I can't
Yeah.
live out here. So that lasted about 18 months, maybe almost 2 years. Moved back, and my buddy Chris Grady, who did sound for Hopesfall, was working with that band Chiodos.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
he's like, "We need like, what are you doing?" I was like, "I just moved home, nothing." And I was like, "I started a new band," and um, he's like, "Just come drum tech for a tour." So I went out and drum teched, and ran into Brian Southall, who I had met. I think Brian and we think we had met before 2009. Um, so record comes out in '07, summer of '07. I go to LA right as that record comes out. Was there, and then I moved back basically the summer of '09, and did a tour with Chiodos as a drum tech, and Brian Southall from Boys Night Out and Receiving End of Sirens was tour managing, and we fucking hated that band. Like, couldn't fucking stand them. I'm not gonna speak for Brian, but I fucking hated it. And their singer was such a fucking piece of shit. And I was like, this is what this side of the business is like. I don't want to be part of it.
Right.
He's like, well, I work. He's like, I tour manage Motion City Soundtrack, and we need like a drum tech and a keyboard tech. I was like, okay. So the end of '09, I went out and started working with Motion City with Brian, and we had like a killer 2.5, 3 years. Like it was so much
Nice.
fun.
And you were
Um,
just teching during that time?
I was just teching, yeah. Brian was tour managing, great band, like lifelong friends. I saw them in October, and it's like old friends. You don't haven't seen in years, but you like
Yeah. pick
You
up
don't
right.
skip. Yeah, you don't skip a beat. All the same jokes are still funny, and
Yeah. And
so
that's a
then
special type of friendship too.
yeah, and so we did that for 3 years, and Brian moved on to tour manage All Time Low, and Riley Breckenridge, who is the drummer of Thrice, because I'd become good friends with those guys years prior, because Thrice had split up, and Riley was drum teching for Jimmy World, and he was gonna leave because he was getting married, and he just called me and was like, "Do you want to come do this Jimmy World gig?" And I was like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
in a heartbeat." So beginning of 2013, I went and did that, and that got me into the Jimmy World is managed by John Silva, um, which John manages like Foo Fighters, and he
Yeah.
managed Nirvana and Beastie Boys and Nine Inch Nails and
Crazy.
by Beck and Queens of Stone Age, all these great bands, and got me involved in that camp. They moved me over to Band of Horses in 2014. Um, they put
Seattle
me
zone, baby.
Seattle's own Band of Horses.
Yeah.
I started working with Garbage that same year. There was that connection to Silva with Butch Vig, and
Okay.
um, so went over the Garbage. And in 2015, Ben Bridwell, the singer of Band of Horses, was just like, "I need a production manager. Can you production manage?" I was like, and of course lied, and I was like, "Absolutely." And
I know how
I
to do
called,
that easily.
I called Brian. I was like, "What do I need to do?" And he's like, "Do X, Y, and Z things." And he's like, "You know what you're doing anyway, but just do X, Y, and Z." And yeah, and then I went back to Garbage as a production manager. Then I went back to Jimmy Eat World as a tour manager after that, and I've just been doing that ever since.
That's crazy. I mean,
Yeah,
that's a large list of awesome bands to work
yeah.
with.
Hey man, I've been, last year it was a crazy year. I did a Perfect Circle. I did St. Vincent. I did Garbage. I did Jimmy Eat World.
How much
All
interaction do you get with the bands?
depends. Tour managing, you know, everything.
Everything. Yeah.
Jimmy's I tour manage, so my interaction with the band is heavy. St. Vincent I was tour managing, so my interaction with Annie was everything. With Maynard, I just production manage. So my interactions with Maynard is strictly, you know, whenever he wants to talk to me, pretty
Right.
much.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
but he's a really nice guy, and
He seems like it. Yeah.
yeah, no, he's cool. But yeah, on the production side, just it's few and far between. With Garbage, I've been with them for so long. My interactions with them is a little bit more than I think maybe a lot of production managers, just because I've been there for 10 years and I'm one of the recurring faces over the years.
Yeah.
So like if we have new crew coming in, it's like there's you gravitate towards
Yeah.
the familiar face. But from the production side, like not that much because you're the first one in, last one out.
Right.
You're tour managing. You're in when the band gets in. You're out when the band goes out. So
Yeah.
really just depends on like um, what side of the aisle I'm on.
What's like one of your favorite aspects of say doing production and one of your favorite aspects of doing the tour managing?
Production, I think my favorite thing is it's a lot of, especially on the bigger tours, it's a lot of logistics and I like logistics. Like I like making the show happen
Yeah.
and having a crew that if you give enough information to and you give them the things they need, they're going to succeed. And um, yeah, I like just building that show. And I like being the guy that's like working with the local and the rest of your touring crew to make sure that this show happens and like
Yeah.
there's no issues so that when the band comes in, they don't the best shows are when the bands don't say fuck all because that means nothing happened,
Right. 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 Right.
like it's I was doing like when Maynard would come off stage, we would walk to stage. That's usually when the conversations would happen, which are like
Sure.
5 minutes before the show. I'm like, geez, okay, we're talking about this. But the best is when you walk off stage and you're looking for notes and there's no notes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
we just did this really great show. With tour management, I probably like that less. Um, and I'm like very particular about who I tour manage. Um, Jimmy's are great. Like they are, you know,
They just seem like an
yeah.
amazing, wonderful, nice. Like Jimmy
His,
Atkins just seems like a
he's the
amazing
best.
human being.
On all of those guys are historically are known as the nicest guys in rock and roll.
Yeah.
And when people are like, "Oh, you work for Jimmy at World," Jim Atkins, nicest front guy in rock and roll. And I think, and I've told him this before, I'm like, you guys get, and I know it seems cliche, and maybe it's not hip and cool, but to be known as the nicest band
That's an amazing thing.
in an industry full of complete
Narcissistic, like, yeah.
scumbags, like that are still popular and still working and still out. Yeah, I get it. They're out drawing you and they're doing better numbers. I get it. But like, they have such a reputation. It would take, you know, a Netflix psycho murder doc to
The
tarnish the
downfall of Jim
yeah
Atkins.
yeah to tarnish these guys' reputation. I've become close with them over the years because we come from a very same upbringing
Yeah,
in
for
all
sure.
aspects of our lives. From when we were kids to when we were in bands in high school playing shows to playing VFW halls. And they're a couple years older than I am. They were about 5 years before me. But it's like the same trajectory. And they just wrote some bangers, got on the
Yeah.
radio, and, but they're the same. I didn't meet them until 2000. Well, I met them in 2010. We did an Australian tour with them, but we didn't really spend any time with them. Um, that was worth anything. But so 10 plus years knowing them, they're the same now as they were 12 years ago or 11 years ago when we met. And I'm sure that they were the same in
Right.
2001 that they were in 2013. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
What's your favorite Jimmy and World record?
Um, Clarity, it's a cliche answer, but like me and my friends, we really liked Static Prevails. It was, um, like upbeat, and there was more upbeat stuff, and Tom sings a little bit more on it. We liked that there were two singers. But when Clarity came out, it was like, you know, there's those times in your life where a record hits and you're
Yeah.
going through, like I'm going through this transition. Like, do I really want to listen to this like
Right.
aggressive screaming music all the time? Like, I want to find other things. And yeah, Clarity came out, and you're like, oh shit, like okay, this is cool. So
What's a band you wish that you had toured with or could have gotten the chance to tour with? Whether that's even just like being on the same tour or like playing with them.
it's a good question, man. Um, every band that's popping in my head right now, I'm like, nope, we did a festival with them. Nope, we did a little run with them. Um, no, we did shows with them.
You're so experienced.
Yeah, this is a well, it's if anything, it just is the amount of time that I've been in this business and touring, which is 20 plus years. Um, damn, that's a really good question. It's probably like some old cat. Like I've never seen Paul McCartney,
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
like he's just at like, I mean, I'm not gonna ever see Genesis or Phil. Um, that boat has sailed, but I mean, anyone else I've wanted to see or like have been on festivals with, like
Yeah.
Springsteen. Saw Springsteen at a festival. So not, got up on stage, watched a few
It's
songs,
amazing.
fucked off. So like, yeah, I mean, like it sounds kind of cliche, but all of these other bands that we grew up listening to, like Weezer was a big band for me in the 90s. You know, we Motion City toured with them. Um, we did Garbage did Cal Jam in 2018 with one of the first Nirvana reunions, where John from Deer Tick played and Joan Jett played. So they did six Nirvana songs. And knowing I've known the Foos camp for years, a lot of the people in that camp, and I just went up to the crew. I was like, I need like the best spot to watch Dave
Yeah.
play Nirvana songs, and they were like, come right over here. I'm like, great. Never thought I would see Dave Grohl play Nirvana. But I got to see that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't know. It's really hard. I've been really lucky and fortunate over the years, and to see a lot of the groups that I wanted to see when I was younger, or make friends with them, or you know.
What do you think is the most underrated record in that scene period? Say like 2000 to 2010.
Um, an underrated record. It might not be underrated, but I don't think. I mean, I think Control is Pedro the Lion's Control from start
Yeah.
to finish is um, one. It's one of my like handful of records that I can put on and just from start to finish. Um, so that's probably because when I tell people that, it's like they're like, yeah, I don't know. I'm like, it's great. Like
Yeah.
it sounds great. Like the drums are great on it. Also, the drums are played by the guy singing and playing guitar,
Right.
and like that's pretty. I mean, he had a spark on that record that you don't hear a lot.
It's like the Control has options and an Indian Summer, right? On it. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like those are some of my favorite songs.
yeah, and it's just and the storytelling on that record is awesome.
Yeah.
Like
Was
it's
he on?
beautiful.
Was it J Tree that? What was he on?
No, he Control, I believe, still came out on Tooth and Nail.
Okay, I was fortunate to see. Like I've seen Bazan like a couple of times, but I got to see Bazan play with American football
Oh, nice.
when American football went back
Oh,
on
very cool.
tour. Um,
Um, a
only
l-
see a Seattle show. That was
yeah,
it.
and I think it's underrated too because it's hard for him to make a living playing music with a full band,
Sure. Yeah.
and I think that that's a very he's a prime example for me because I think he's a great songwriter, like of how cruel the business is because here's a guy that's I think a great songwriter and has great records, and I would spend $100 to go see Bazan play. Um, but he can't make the living that he needs to make
Right.
with a four-piece band on tour.
Right.
That's I was like it sucks, So you got to settle for like living room shows or three
Right.
piece or him doing a makeshift full band with keyboards and playing drums with his feet. I don't know if you saw
Yeah.
that. I don't know if you saw that version or not, but
No. No. No.
yeah,
Didn't he recently tour off of Hard to Find a Friend and not Control?
yeah, he's got a three-piece band out right
Okay.
now. He's got a woman playing keyboard bass, this guitar player that's been with him for a little while, and he's playing drums and singing, which is kind of
Crazy.
weird. Yeah, weird
Yeah.
and yeah, but it's working. Like,
On that show with American football, he had just released a new album, but this was the only time he was going to play the album completely electronically. Like
yeah.
he just did a different version of the record instead of
Well,
acoustically.
that's what's kind of brilliant about him, I think, is that he's got a dozen ways to play every single song.
Yeah.
And it's like really, really cool. Because there's some songs that I've heard from him. He did a living room tour I went to a handful of years ago where he was just playing. He would like turn an amp on its backside, a PV amp, and run guitar and vocal through it, but he's playing electric. And he had this track called, I think, Permanent Record, which was digital on a record, keyboards and programmed drums and stuff. And he played it in like a down tuning on a Jaguar guitar that was slightly distorted through a PV amp that he was also running vocals through.
That's crazy.
And it was I've found some other live video of that, and I'm like, this is the best version of that song. Like it's fucking awesome. And it's the best version because it's just really raw. But it went from this digital recording to this, you know, just really raw guitar
Yeah.
electric. And it was like fucking awesome. So I just don't think he gets enough run. Um, and I think that record is highly underrated. And the other, I'd say one more is Mock Orange's Nines and Sixes. I don't know if you've ever heard that record or
I
not,
haven't
but
heard that record. Yeah, I'll need to check it
great
out.
band. They're awesome.
No.
Um, they were on Lobster Records, I think it was, or some shit like that. But Mock Orange, Nines and Sixes is killer. Yeah.
By the way, speaking of American football, Steve Lamos, the drummer,
Mhm.
one of the nicest guys. I
All of
had him
those
on the
guys.
yeah, I had him on the podcast. Like I was amazed that I could even get him.
They're
We ended
all
up
we
talking
see.
about he's a college professor, so we ended up talking
Uh,
about like the state of academic
yeah.
education. You know?
we we see Mike every time Jimmy's are in Chicago. Mike Kinsella comes out.
Does he?
Yeah,
I love Owen. Like his project Owen was like one of the
yeah, that's
biggest
great.
soundtracks of my life.
We did when I was with the that group Vedera. We did a tour with Make Believe, which was Nate and Tim Kinsella's
Okay,
band. They had a band in '04, '05 called Make Believe. That was cool.
nice.
And we did a tour with them, which I won't get into, but you can find uh, an interesting incident from that tour. Just look it up on the internet.
Okay.
Nate Kinsella, Oklahoma, 2005.
All right.
Um,
Last question, Jason.
yeah,
Um, what is a piece of advice you would give your younger self um, when you first started playing music?
when I first started playing
We're
music.
taking, 20 plus years of experience.
Are we
Yeah.
talking like when I first wanted to do this professionally, or like when I
Yes,
first picked
yes,
up a
yes,
pair?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, buy stock in Apple. Um, I think. Oh man, do you want the real answer, or you want the candy coated answer?
No, I want the real answer. Yeah.
Um, and this is all probably hindsight, but I would probably tell my younger self to um, maybe think about doing something else.
Hmm,
Maybe going to school. Maybe warn him of the ups and downs of the industry
sure.
and like how hard it's going to be to stay sane and to stay sober and to
Yeah.
not fall into the pits of this really selfish industry. It's the most selfish thing that I've ever been a part of,
Hmm.
and and that can be like a real struggle at times.
That's it. Yeah.
So I would warn myself of that and say like, if you aren't looking to get involved in a cesspool of people like Josh Babel from Trustkill and all of the people that you've come across that you thought were friends and just wanted something from you because you could give them something,
Yeah.
um, maybe think about doing something else. It's a kind of a sad answer, but because I
It's
love
the
the
truth.
industry.
Yeah.
I love the industry that I'm in, I just have to avoid the bullshit that the industry is, and I've settled very nicely in the positions that I'm in. I make a great living around great people,
Yeah.
and I'm one of the most fortunate people that I know, um, for getting to do what I get to do and having it provide for me, and um, so, so I don't take any of that for granted. But
Sure.
it's not without its struggles, like anything else in
Yes, of
life.
course.
you know,
Yeah.
but you sacrifice a lot, and I don't think that young people realize like how much you sacrifice in your time and your relationships with people,
Yeah.
and um, what you really have to give up. Because next thing you know, you're 40 years old, and you're just like, I've missed a lot. Like
Yeah.
friends and family are important to me, and there's been a lot that I've missed.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to do a lot of catch up.
That
As my
makes,
parents turned 70, this
yeah.
past. So they've been incredibly supportive. But you wake up one day and you're like, oh yeah, they're not
Yeah.
always going to be here, and you have missed a lot.
Yeah. I
You
was
know.
talking to the lead singer of this band called Polar Bear Club,
Hmm.
and we were talking. His name is Jimmy Stad, and I asked him like his last tour that he did, like what was that like? And he's like, all I could remember was like just depression.
Yeah.
Like I had missed so much. I had missed weddings. I had missed like all your friends are moving on in life, and you're just kind of stuck in this,
Yeah.
the cycle,
Yeah.
and yeah, kind of that same feeling of just like everybody's moving on.
Yeah. And I don't really go through, I'm not that emotional with it
Sure.
in terms of like depression. Because if I were depressed, I wouldn't do it. Like
Right,
I'm
right,
I'm very much like, I've never put myself in a situation where like, if this is wrong and you don't feel good about this, just stick it out, and
right.
then I find myself in the pits of hell, 3 years later, and like, how do I
Right.
get out of this? It's a big part of like why I've never done drugs,
Yeah.
gotten around in drugs. Not that like I'm anti-drug or anything. It's like, that's not good for me.
Right.
That's not gonna, I'm not, never been a heavy drinker, because that's not good for me. Especially if I'm going to be on the road, I need to be clear. I need to have a clear mind, and be able to make decisions that are not going to make my life any worse. Being on the road.
Yeah.
Um,
It was more alluding to the fact that there's so much you miss.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I mean. To that point, it's like, you have to accept that, though. So
Yeah.
what I was saying with like, if to my younger self, like, hey, here is how this is going to go. And right now at 20 years old, if you're willing to accept that, and I don't know if I would have been, to say like, you know, you're going to miss all of these things. At times, you're going to have no money. At times, you're going to have a bunch of money, and then you're going to be confused with what you want to do, and you're going to be taken. People will try to take advantage of you at every turning point. Now that happens in life all the time.
Sure.
So this is not a woe is me for musicians, but
Sure.
if you can come to grips, like you were talking about the guy from Polar Bear Club. If I ever felt like that, I would be done in a heartbeat.
Yeah. And that's what he
Right.
was,
Yeah, and good for him. Like, more, and when I hear people that are in bands get to that point and they're able to walk away and then do good and
Yeah.
then be healthy and be all these things, I'm so stoked for them. And
Yeah.
like, because if you don't do that, you'll wind up in the ground.
Yeah.
Lots of people that have sadly ended up that way over the years, and it's like, fuck, it's like, wish you could have gone back to your younger self and been like, don't do this, because
Right.
this is not good for you. Like,
Yeah.
you can't mentally, you can't handle being away from the people you love and not having that normal life,
Yeah.
which I tell people all the time. I'm like, oh, yeah, I just hate my job. And I'm like, you make good money. You work 9 to 5.
Right.
If I could, I say it all the time. I'm like, the moment a steady job, I shouldn't be saying this, so I hope no one I work with hears this, but the moment a steady job comes, and they're like, we can pay you X, it's a
Very
serious.
enticing.
It'll
Yeah.
be it'll be the first time I go, this is a serious, let's talk about this,
Yeah.
because I can make the same amount of money and get health benefits, and
Stability is a hell of a thing.
yeah, stability is, and everyone looks for stability at some
Yeah.
point in life. So I've been able to find I've been able to find it in the industry that I'm in, like a pretty good stable life. But man, it's really hard to maintain it at times, like anything else. But
Yeah.
yeah, the long-winded answer would be warn myself
The dangers and the pitfalls.
of this industry very much so, and say like maybe go get your 4 year, and maybe you'll find something that's more attractive than trying to play drums in front of a bunch of people.
Yeah. I think thank you for being honest with that. Like
Yeah, of course.
that's all I ask.
Yeah,
I gotta get going here, Jason. Thank
yeah,
you so
man.
much
Dude, of
for
course,
the
dude. Thanks for chatting.
conversation.
Yeah, it blew by, man. It was a good chat.
Yeah, it did. It
Yeah,
did. All right,
yes.
man. Well, I will talk to you later. Have a great time in LA when you get out there,
Thank you.
whatever you're doing. And I will let you know when this comes out.
Awesome, Jeremy. Sounds cool.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Jason. Have a
Later,
good
buddy.
night, man.
You too.
Bye.